So, the postman was called and left something behind. And I'm rather excited. Pretty sure I know what's inside. Yep, that's what I was expecting. A Class 1300 heavy goods electric locomotive from Rivarossi. It's a locomotive I've been looking to purchase for the last year or so, but it's, I thought, ridiculously expensive from a general store. This particular version was about 260 to 280 euros some stores. And this one I actually won a bid on eBay. I'm quite pleased because it was for 150 euros for a new lock. It's 120 euros cheaper than from the store, so I can't afford to buy new locomotives, so this is the first one I bought, probably really ever. I always have a purpose for my locks. I don't just buy them because they're pretty. On my layout, I have a vacancy for the heavy goods locks to shuttle the yard transfers, do the yard transfer shuttles, and this will be one of the locks to do that particular function. It's Dutch Railways livery for the 80s roughly, which is roughly where I'm modelling it. Okay, that wasn't too painful. So, quick look. Like most locomotives, I'm not really, I would like it to be a little bit heavier. So maybe adding some weight to it. Again, it needs to do some pulling up the helixes. But anyway, that's what the postman left behind this time. Okay, it's not a review, but some conclusions based on this new lock. Based on the experiences I've had with it now. This is a lock that sells in most hobby shops at more than 250 euros. So you expect very, very high quality on it, and alas, it isn't. It's a Rivarossi, which is part of Hornby these days. And I have to say the quality is just not there. Thankfully, I won an auction on eBay, and I only paid 150 euros for it. And at that price, I think it is worth the money. Let me explain why. The build is very flimsy. There are little bits all over front and rear of the lock that sometimes fall out. I had a buffer fall out, had to re-glue on. Also around the bogies, these flimsy little add on. Let's see, you can see it move, I think. This little add-on to the bogie here is a little thing held on with a tiny little pin, and I read somewhere in a forum that they fall off rather quickly, and that they're supposed to be, oh, here you can see it move. I think they're to do with sanding of the wheels, but they're very flimsy. There were 8 of them. 4 on each bogie, and 6 have fallen off in the meantime. I also found that at the front end of the bogies, they were on there, and that they were limiting the radius. Of course, Marklin has a rather smallish radius for R2, but this should run on that. So I've taken them off anyway. That was one issue. Another issue is coupling. Is not mounted to the bogie, but is a loose spring-loaded, which you'll often see on wagons, a spring-loaded. This is a rather loosely sprung coupling, which works fine when pulling, but when pushing a few cars, particularly around a corner, a curve, this coupling is pushed aside very easily and causes derailments and other things. So I was trying to fix that somehow or other, and finally eventually broke the coupling holder. But that was a blessing in disguise, because what I finally decided to do was mount a coupling directly onto the bogie. So you can see that here. And now the coupling is always lined up along the track, which is, I think, the way it should be. On some of my Marklin locks, the bogie is the coupling is linked to the bogie, and that certainly helps. So that's a modification I had to make. Another modification is that this is a 3-rail locomotive, Marklin, and it came with a center pickup. But this this center pickup is the flimsiest piece of tin I've ever seen in my life, and there we go. Just touching it causes it to bend. Look at that. I've hardly touched it. So this is a crummy piece of kit, and I'm going to replace that with a Marklin pickup if I need to. Now, because I have live overhead, I've taken off the center pickup, and I'm now running with live overhead. Expect to have some blurb about an instruction manual, but there's pretty much nothing. It's just a spare parts kit. So when I was fiddling around with the lock, and I determined that the center pickup was pretty hopeless, so I wanted to change to the functional pantographs, but there was no switch. I didn't know where it was. So there was nothing in the manual about how to switch from center pickup to overhead. But when I was taking the lock apart, the hood here came loose, and then all of a sudden I saw, inside there's a tiny little switch there that you can switch between track and overhead. Okay, so finally got that figured out. So some of the grab irons are a little loose. This one I've had to fool around with. Generally, it's pretty flimsy. So you learn after you've had your metal-bodied Marklin locks that you can pick up with a fist, as it were. You then go to other manufacturers, and you have to be a little bit more careful in picking it up. The pantographs, that was another issue. The pantographs, they're functional, so they're supposed to be used, or can be used, but the pantograph top layer here was just square bits of metal, and they were quickly fouling on any slight bumps in the overhead, which I didn't have any problems with the Marklin because they have rounded sections. So what I had to do was grind the front side of and the rear side of the pantographs, grind them down a little bit to have an edge on them, a rounded edge on them, so that they would not foul on any slight imperfection. Then the pantos as well were rather narrow and had squared off. There was a sharp angle between the top flat piece and then immediately a corner piece going down. And I've had to bend these up a little bit, and I've also ground down that corner pieces that were on each side, so that I've now got a smooth rounded top, which is what you need with a pantograph when moving across the wires. So that was another issue. So I'm going to have to put a keep alive in there, which is the capacitors. But the ones I have are too big. The inside engine is so large that there's really no room, or very little room inside. I'm going to have to source some capacitors that will fit inside for the keep alive function. Finally, weight issue. This was, I think the lock was about 380 grams, if I remember right. And anyway, under 400. Next to my Ludmilla big heavy diesel, I wanted an electric heavy goods lock, 6 axles. But the more axles you add, if you do not increase the weight of the locomotive, then the axle pressure actually decreases and you can lose traction by adding axles. So this was around 400 or a bit less grams, which is rather light for a 6-axle lock. So I've added here this is a 60-gram piece of steel that I had lying around, which I think came from another lock or something. And I mounted that at the bottom so that the lock is now, well, I think it was around 400, so it's now 460 or 470 grams weight, which gives a little bit more pressure on the axles. So that's the experience. It was not exactly a run out of the box quality by any means. But now that I've made the modifications that I've made to it, it runs quite well. Okay, some videos of it running. It does look really, really great. This is the locomotive that held the world speed record. It's a French-built Alstom, and it held the world speed record in the 50s and 60s at 350 k's, or about 220 miles an hour at that time. And it does look good on the layout, I have to say. That's the main reason I bought it. It looks really great.